Hello, my name is Carly Ann Rose. I'm currently the Early Years Leader and Science Leader at Mayflower Community Academy in Plymouth, and I've been an improvement champion for a couple of years now. One of the biggest benefits of facilitating a virtual workshop was the opportunity to learn new skills. Quite often you've experienced sitting there and listening to a CPD, being that person that gets sent off into a breakout room or using a new digital platform such as Jamboard. But having the opportunity to facilitate a workshop enabled me to learn those new skills. My initial concern was probably flying solo. Normally, in normal circumstances, you'd be putting a pair and then together you would plan and facilitate an improvement champion workshop. You'd be able to bounce ideas off each other and have a debate about which tool you thought would be best. I recently spoke to Vanessa, who shared some experiences from another remote virtual workshop that was happening recently, and they did work as a pair, where one person facilitated via Zoom and the other member of staff was in school and was whizzing around with a piece of paper, etc., like we normally do. However, you soon realise that by doing a virtual one, as long as you are expecting all of your participants to have their own digital device and all of your activities are digital, you don't actually need that comfort blanket. You're more than capable of leading a CPD by yourself. My second concern was silence. And I think most people would probably feel that if they're asked to lead a CPD. We've all been there in staff meetings before where somebody asks a question and nobody wants to share an answer. However, there are ways around that, such as cold calling techniques that you'll be using every day in your live and remote teaching sessions. Just make sure that everyone has their own digital device, everyone has their camera on, and everyone has their name present, so you're able to pick people if it does get a little bit quieter. My final concern was tech issues. What if they couldn't log on? What if they weren't able to access Jamboard? What if the break rooms didn't work? So I just advise you to make sure you practice first. My first online tool that I used was Zoom. I actually asked the school that I was facilitating the virtual workshop for which platform they would prefer, and they chose Zoom, so at least I knew everyone was able to access that, which was brilliant. It also enabled me to have breakout rooms, it enabled me to share screen, share volume, etc., so it's a really good tool to use. The second online tool that I chose to use was Jamboard, and actually I'd never used that before and was a little bit nervous to begin with. Obviously with our SPP training, we have learned all about these wonderful facilitation tools, but most of them were paper-based, so the idea of having to lead some of those activities virtually initially was a little bit of a dread. However, the SPP team have been working incredibly hard behind the scenes and have transferred all of the SPP facilitation tools that are appropriate onto a platform called Jamboard. And actually, as long as you can sign in with a Google account, you can then add them to your page and edit them as you wish. So I was able to prepare all of the Jamboards in advance of using them with the virtual workshop. I plan to use the SPP group action planning tool as the last activity in the virtual workshop. And although the vision was clear, the specific outcomes required further conversation and communication between the Year 2 team and SLT. So I think next time I would suggest planning and using the SPP problem solving team building facilitation tool instead. I would say preparation is key. Make sure you've practiced and practiced and practiced again. I was lucky enough to ask one of my members of staff to have a run through with, and I found out that even though I'd practiced with myself again and again, actually I hadn't got the right settings to be able to do a breakout room, so I needed to amend those in time. And I also had, although I'd changed the settings for Jamboard to allow a participant to be able to view it, I actually hadn't changed it so they were able to edit it. So I learned a lot by having that third extra practice. I always like to include a couple of icebreakers. So this time around I used a mindfulness one at the beginning where the participants were asked to write down anything that was worrying them, any of their concerns, and then fold that and push that to the side until the end. And then I gave some time at the end where they're able to revisit that and share if they wanted to. And the second icebreaker I used was about halfway through, and that was just before I wanted them to explore the SWOT analysis facilitation tool. But instead of launching straight in there with their communication, which was quite a juicy one, I launched it with whether they should eat chocolate for breakfast. I think we will use a blended approach. I mean, virtual definitely has its pros and cons. It's convenient for most members of staff, especially during current circumstances where you've got some adults working from home. It's easy to record and therefore you can play back. And I think sometimes you lose that barrier of sharing when you're behind a screen. You've got some members of staff that may be a bit more confident. Jamboard was brilliant as well. So it enabled everybody to be able to engage and participate, whereas sometimes you'll find in a real life workshop you'll always have the same members of staff from each group that will be sharing their answers or representing the team. However, with facilitation tools like dotography, which are absolutely amazing, which gets everyone getting up, everyone whizzing around the room, putting their dots in the certain areas, I don't think that can be done virtually. So I think a blended approach is definitely something that we'll be using at Mayflower Community Academy.